Welcome to NFL World, where NFL starts and ends. I'm your host, Jacob. And to begin, I hope everyone has had a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year to you. And we didn't do a show on Monday, so we're going to squish both shows together. So let's first begin with news that happened today. Broncos benched Russell Wilson for Jarrett Stidham. This was a shocker, more than likely. But you had a 1.4% chance of making the playoffs. Not impossible, but very low. And it makes sense because the contract that Russell Wilson signed is similar to the Raiders when they signed Derek Carr to his contract. If he gets hurt, that contract becomes much more complicated. You can still get rid of him, just you won't have a whole lot of cap savings. But if he's healthy, the savings still not as big or better than if he's injured. So they benched him for Jarrett Stidham. They have the Raiders, if I remember correctly. They have the Raiders, and they have, if I remember, they have the Raiders, or the Chargers and Raiders. So yeah, they have the Chargers, and then they have the Raiders. So not impossible, but still very unlikely. Is this saying this is Denver saying? Is this Denver saying Russ, you're gone next year, or we just don't want you to get hurt? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Next up, the Giants have decided to start Tyrod Taylor over Tommy DeVito. Tyrod Taylor, I mean, you put him in the game against the Eagles, and he made key plays when it mattered. Now, like the problem with the Eagles is their secondary is not very good, so that's a questionable defense. But you put him in the game, he played well. Do what you have to do. The Giants are still trying to play spoiler at the moment. So again, do what you gotta do. You play the Eagles one more time in New York, the final game of the year. Let's see what happens. Also, Tommy DeVito's dad went on YouTube when DeVito was benched, said, "How could they do this? How could they do this?" They're trying to win the game. You threw 3 interceptions. They're trying to win the game. And they could have won the game. They absolutely could have. They had a couple missed plays by Robinson in the late quarter of the game. Waller catches a pass over the middle, does not get up. Right away, tries to get himself out, but they can't do it. They gotta spike the ball, so they waste like 10 seconds, which is the equivalent of an entire deep play, which is what they would have needed. So Tyrod Taylor's back in the starting lineup. Tommy DeVito go to the bench. Next up, before we head into the recapping and preview of the portion, it is Jimmy Johnson week. Jimmy Johnson is going to the Cowboys Ring of Honor on December 30th. That is this Saturday as the Cowboys face the Detroit Lions. And I'm going to quickly take a story of 2 things from Mike Fisher, who said this. There's a great story on Jimmy Johnson about the 2x4. And one day he goes, and I don't remember if he was in college or he was with the Cowboys at this time, but he had his ranch and he brought in a 2x4. He put a 2x4 on the ground. He has you walk across the 2x4 on the ground. See how easy this is? Walking across the 2x4. Then he puts the 2x4 on 2 ladders, about 10 feet in the air. Can you walk across the 2x4? And people would be scared, well, it's 10 feet off the ground, it's this, it's that. He's like, look, it's the same 2x4. It's just higher. It's just up. It's higher up. Can you walk across the 2x4? And what he's trying to mean by that is the pressure ramps up, but the game remains the same. When you get into the regular season, that 2x4 is on the ground. You're walking across that 2x4 on the ground. When you get to the playoffs or playoff season, that 2x4 is no longer on the ground, it's up in the air. So there's a risk of difficulty. You don't want to fall off, but it's still the same 2x4. It's just in the air now. It's not on the ground. It's the same thing. That's what he was trying to prove. And it's a great story. It really is. And, this was 30 years in the making for the Cowboys to try to bring Jimmy Johnson into the Cowboys Ring of Honor. And was it rushed? Maybe. Should there have been a bigger announcement than was? Probably. But I'm happy it's getting done. It needs to be done. Enough foolishness. You guys, both Jimmy and Jerry, you don't have to live together. You don't have to get married together. You don't have to do anything together. For one night, just pretend that you're happy to be with each other. Because this is what Cowboys fans want. You're both 81, 82 years old. There's no reason to go and be like, you know what? I want to go do this. I want to do this. You're 81 years old. You're both in good health. Do it. Let's go. Let's stop wasting time. We talk a lot about this in the Hall of Fame. With the NFL Hall of Fame. We're bringing in players that are passed away, that have passed over. But we're not putting them in when they're alive. Because we're saying, well, we can only put in 7 or 10 guys. You can put in anyone you want. You can put as many as you want. Why not do that? You can do the 5 years. That's fine. But put them in when you can put in as many guys as you want. Why was it, for an example, I want to give a couple of examples. Darren Woodson. Why did it take him so long to get in? It's taken him almost 20 years to get in. Why is it taking so long? Makes no sense. Hale Carmichael took forever to get in. Should have been in. Let me think of another one. Randy Moss took a long time to get in. Or I felt like it took a long time to get in. I'm trying to think of a couple more off the top of my head. Charles Haley took forever for him to get it. No reason it took that long, but it did. Ed Too Tall Jones, still not in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the first guys with 100 sacks. He's not in. Don't know why. Just not. Drew Pearson, it took 30 years to go in. Why it takes so long? Because the NFL doesn't want to put in too many players from the same teams. They also don't want to put. They only want to put 7 players in, or 7 people or 8 people in. When you can put in as many as you want, the same thing goes for the Ring of Honor. Put Jimmy in, Jared. We kept saying it over the years. Just put him in. You guys are both in the 8. You're both 80. It was okay when you guys were 50, but now you're 80. There is no reason to do this. And finally, it's getting done. Jimmy Johnson week. I'm very excited, and I can't wait. It's going to be on Monday Night Football, a special Monday Night Football presentation that this game was supposed to happen on the 1st, ends up getting moved back to the 30th. But Jimmy Johnson is going to be there. In the Cowboys Ring of Honor, Troy Aikman will be there. I have no doubt that all of his former players will be there, and I can't wait for Saturday night. Next up, a couple of things I want to talk about. So, to begin, or actually, here's breaking news. The Texans expect CJ Stroud to practice today. He has missed the last 2 games with a concussion. Let's hope he plays for week 17 as the Texans try to make it into the playoffs. But I have a couple of things I want to talk about. First, everyone keeps thinking in the media, well, the Chiefs are this, or the Eagles are this, they're this good, they're going to go back to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they can't. I've seen a lot of things happen. But I see more problems with the Chiefs and Eagles on what is supposed to be their best sides of the football. The Eagles are supposed to be the most complete team, and Dale Johnston brought it up brought it up on Monday. Said the frustrating thing with the Eagles are they make a bonehead play, and a couple plays later, they throw a 30-yard pass and they get a first down. And that's what happened. You look, they go into Hurts tries to throw a ball to Goddard. Goddard slips. It gets intercepted by Dory Jackson, who runs it back for a pick six. But they end up going for a 2-point conversion because Hurts tackles Jackson by horse collaring him. That's what happened. Now Jackson still got into the end zone, but they moved that ball from the 2 to the 1, go for the 2-point try. They get it, and that makes the game a lot more close. More close for comfort, I should say. More close for comfort. And a couple plays later, it's a 3rd and 20, and they throw the ball to A.J. Brown for a 30-yard completion and a first down. And Daryl Johnson's like, this is the frustrating thing about the Eagles, and Eagles fans know this. There's times their offense looks so gone, like they just don't know what they're doing, and then there's flashes of brilliance. And it's true. It's very true. How they got to that 3rd and 20, multiple false starts. That's what happened. And I get it, but at the same time, it's like you're supposed to be better than that. And your secondary is awful. Your secondary is awful. You really honestly shouldn't have won the game against the Giants. You were that bad. Because Slayton catches a 70-yard touchdown because your safety doesn't get out of his back pedal fast enough. And as long as the quarterback just doesn't miss him, it's a touchdown. Multiple interference calls that weren't called late in the game on the Eagles, including the Hail Mary one, which should have been called. Guy was getting pushed in the back of the end zone and getting pushed right out of bounds. Like, of course, it should have been called. But it wasn't. But that's too many close calls for the Eagles. How many times are the Eagles going to play close games? They shouldn't be in this close game, especially not against the Giants. You should be beating the Giants by more than 8 points. You should have beaten the Giants by 17 points, 14 points, 17 points, something like that, and you aren't. That's concerning to me. A Giants team who doesn't score a whole lot of points scored 25 on you, and you scored 33. That's concerning. And for the Chiefs, like we saw against the Raiders, what happened. They score 14 points, but they gave 14 points to the Raiders. The Raiders only kicked field goals, and then they get 2 turnovers that they run back for touchdowns. They get a fumble because you're trying to be too cute. They try to hand the ball off to Mahomes. It fumbles it. Ball's on the ground, gets recovered. And we have a defensive score by a defensive tackle. Or defensive lineman, I should say. I don't know what position he plays, but defensive lineman. And on the next play, Mahomes throws an interception. he stares down the receiver, and he throws it, and Jack Jones brings it back for a touchdown. That's what happened. That's the problem with the Chiefs. Their defense is really good, but their offense is awful. Besides Kelsey, who do they throw the ball to? Kelsey, Pacheco, maybe Edwards-Helaire, and that's it. There's nothing else. No one else has been proven, which is not terrible, but no one else has been able to do anything, and that's a problem. That is a massive problem. So I'm not saying the Eagles and Chiefs won't go back to the Super Bowl, but it's not as simple as, "Oh, we're gonna get a Super Bowl rematch." There's gonna have to be a lot to go their way, and it could, but there's gonna have to be a lot to go their way, and it's very unlikely. Alright, next up, TJ Hockenson. TJ Hockenson is out for the season with a ACL, MCL injuries. I believe it's torn. That's a really unfortunate thing for the Vikings. He was a big, player in terms of how they used him, red zone, third downs, very consistent. And he's been consistent since he got into the league when he was with the Lions, gets traded over to the Vikings last year. I always thought he played very well. Him not being there is an issue because now it's, okay, Addison, Jefferson, who else do we worry about? That's pretty much it. Maybe Alexander Madison, and that's it. So that's very unfortunate. And the thing is, when you have those injuries, in my experience of watching football, you may come back after a year, but you're not healthy until like a year later than that. So you might get hurt in December and might come back in October, but you might not be healthy until the following year. That happens a lot. We're seeing it. And it's lower leg injuries. It's not just ACL or MCL injuries. It's lower leg injuries, ankle injuries, foot injuries, heel problems, just can't plant the same way, everything. And maybe it's psychological, maybe it's not, I don't know. But it just always, from my vantage point, looks that way. Um, Final thing before we hit the recap and preview. Micah Parsons has not gotten a holding call since mid-October. I know it's crazy. October 16th was the last time we got a holding. It was a Monday night game between the Cowboys and Chargers in the second quarter. It's been 38 quarters since he's gotten a holding call. Now that's absurd. That's absurdity because he gets held pretty much on every single play. And I understand. But I'm stealing this from Mike Fisher. So he actually talked about it. He said the equivalent to Micah Parsons that in terms of what they do to stop him is the equivalent of Shaq when he came out of LSU and went to the Magic, where they couldn't really stop him, and the rules didn't benefit him at all. So he would go up for a dunk, and the players would just grab him, and they wouldn't call a foul. And only a couple years later did they start trying to say, okay, well, the hack a Shaq is we're gonna call it and stuff like that. Micah Parsons is in that situation right now, where he's so good that if they don't hold him, then he's gonna wreck the game. And I get that. I get it. At the same time, there's a couple plays where you're looking at him and he's getting grabbed by two guys and it's right in the line of the official. You gotta call it. It's a holding call. But they aren't. And that's a problem. So I think Michael Parsons has voiced his frustrations, and so has Jerry Jones. But Jerry, there's a lot of word salad when you talk with Jerry Jones. But the one thing that he said that I thought was interesting was the rules don't fit Micah. They don't fit Micah. And I was like, that's true. They don't. And the thing is, the league's going to get more athletic. We're going to get more players that can do what Micah can do, where they can play multiple positions on the defensive side. We're already seeing it wide receivers. Wide receivers playing running back, wide receivers playing quarterback, wide receivers playing wide receiver, obviously, tight end. They can do all this stuff. We see it. Tight ends can do wide receiver stuff. Well, we're seeing it all the time. Offensive linemen obviously playing all up in all the offensive line roles. We've seen it. It's going to have more defensive players. We're not just going to see defensive tackle, defensive end flex. We're going to see guys who can play linebacker, DN, safety, corner. We're already seeing that with Simmons from the Giants. He can line up at linebacker, DN, edge, off-ball linebacker, on-ball linebacker, middle linebacker, safety, corner. He can do all these things. He's probably best suited at safety, but he can do all these things. The concern with that in the NFL is the rules don't benefit those guys. And they can do all these things, but they're faster and they're stronger. And we're going to see these guys have to play that way. And the rules are going to have to change. And I think when they get to the owners meeting in March, the annual owners meeting, they're going to have to talk about it because it is getting ridiculous. He hasn't gotten a holding call since week 6. When the game happened against the Cowboys on Christmas Eve, that had been 70 days since he had gotten a holding call. 70. That's absurd. That's absurdity. And it's getting bad. I understand Miles Garrett gets held, and he does get held a lot. Absolutely. But I haven't seen players get held by 2 players before, or 3 players. That happens all the time with Micah, and that's something I've never seen before. Now, Micah still is wrecking the game, but they're not giving him anything. The refs not helping him at all, and he's inclined to also have those penalties called and not, oh well, you're a good player, we're not going to call it. Do whatever you want. And at what point? And at what point is Micah just going to go and say, all right, fine, you're not going to call it. Here we go. I'm going to go barbaric. At what point? Because he's going to do something. He's going to have to. Maybe that's the only way the NFL is going to look at it and say, okay, well, he's going to do something. We have to do something because he's going to go crazy, whether it's in the playoffs or not, and he's just going to go and grab your face or something because he's going to have to do something at some point. Also, I do want to say this before we move into the last portion of the video. The roughing the passer call on Micah Parsons on Christmas Eve was terrible. It was terrible. Micah comes off the edge. Tua, who already throws the ball faster than anybody, got the ball out just barely. And they called roughing the pass on Micah. Now, they had Dean Blandino talk about this. They call roughing the passer for 2 reasons. One, or 3 reasons. One, you either hit the quarterback low, which he didn't do. 2, did you take 2 steps or more than 2 steps and then hit the quarterback, which he didn't. Or 3, did you hit the quarterback in the head or neck area, which he didn't. He hit him in the shoulder. Shoulder blade portion. But you didn't hit him in the head or neck area, didn't hit him late, didn't hit him low. And all the things that happened was they called it. And Micah's like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? I did everything right. And that's another reason why I think the NFL is going to have to look at this because is Micah just too fast that the rules just don't benefit him? And if that's the case, we have to change the rules because there's going to be more players like that in the future. So we have to change it now. We have to adapt it now because otherwise we're going to have to change it anyway. So let's do it now and get it over with. That to me makes sense. All right. Moving into the recap of week 15. Week 16, excuse me. Oh, hang on. I didn't even put the recap portion in here. That's my fault. So, hang on. Here we go. Okay. So I had, let's first do because it's right up here. Ravens versus 49ers. The Ravens beat the 49ers. I thought I put it. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. We do have it. Perfect. So let's start with the Ravens and 49ers because it's right here. Ravens beat the 49ers 33-19 in a game Brock Purdy did not play very well in. 255 yards, 4 interceptions, no touchdowns. Just not a good game. He ended up leaving the game with a stinger injury he re-aggravated in this game as he had in the previous game. Didn't come back in. Sam Darnold finished the game. Lamar Jackson played really well. 252 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, ran the ball well. The Ravens really controlled the game. At one point, this game was in favor of the 49ers 5-3. I do want to make a quick shout out for when the 4 turnovers that happened to the 49ers besides the last one that he just threw to Roquan Smith, all really good plays. The first one, he looks off Hamilton for a second, tries to throw it back to Samuel. Hamilton jumps the route, intercepts it, makes a big play in the end zone. The second one, the ball gets tipped up in the air, and Marlon Humphrey comes down with it around the 50-yard line or so. Comes down with it. That's a big play. Another one that he does is it's really crazy. Purdy starts to run out. Hamilton tries to come on a blitz. Gets like there's a penalty call on the offensive line because he gets chop blocked. Doesn't stop. He gets back up. Goes to make the play. Ball gets thrown to I think Kittle. Humphrey makes a great play on it. Ball gets to in the air. Hamilton makes the play. Interception. And the last one, he just threw the Roquan Smith. But those are 4 plays that turned the game around. And Purdy did not look very well in this game. He did not look good. The running game from McCaffrey, it looked like they hit him at any chance that they could. He still had a touchdown, but it looked like they hit him at any chance they could. Very unexpected, but it did happen. Next up, Browns beat the Texans 36-22. Amari Cooper played really well in this game. 11 catches, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns, broke the Browns' game record and I believe season record in receiving yards. So congratulations to him. Joe Flacco, 368 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Played really well. Davis Mills started this game, 149 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Singletary had 9 attempts for 44 yards. That's not ideal. See if CJ Stroud comes back this week, and hopefully the Texans can get back on the roll. Next up, Lions beat the Vikings 30-24 in a game that the Lions played very well in. Excuse me. Um, I was impressed with how the Lions played. Goff, 257, 1 touchdown. Gibbs, 2 touchdowns on 15 carries for 80 yards. St. Brown had a touchdown on 12 catches for 106. He played very well. Nick Mullins had 400 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Tyson Chandler had a touchdown, and Jefferson had a touchdown after going for $140. Just not enough from the Vikings, just not enough. And that's not ideal, but it's just not enough. Needed a little more. Just couldn't get it done. You have a chance to go play them in week 18. Next up, the Dolphins beat the Cowboys 22-20 in a game. Tua did not play very well in, and I thought the running game was pretty good. Pretty well stopped by the Cowboys. I'm concerned by the depth of the Cowboys. Thomas Smith did not play, really factored into this game. Before the halftime or after halftime, Dak was sacked 3 times already. That's a problem. And a lot of it was he should have fumbled because he was just getting hit and no one was blocking Bradley Chubb. And that's a problem. When you put a guy in who you think is going to be okay or decent enough that he's going to give you time and he can't give you time. That's a problem. I will make note that the Cowboys have released Rashaan Evans, probably put him back on the practice squad if he clears waivers. And Matt Waletzko, who is a backup tackle, second-year player out of North Dakota, gets his spot coming off his IR stint. So maybe that's the option if Tyron goes down again. Tyron's actually played very well when he's been there. Just wasn't there, and it was a big reason, a massive reason. Next up, actually that's it. The Dolphins did play well, and in the final quarter they did enough of what they were supposed to do, and they won the game. I guarantee you, if they Tua would not have played as bad if they played again. I also don't think the Cowboys only scored 20 points if they play again. That's just how I think of it. So our record after week 16 is 2-2. Was 2-2, which is equals a record of 49-33. Now, moving into week 17, we have the Lions versus Cowboys. This is the Sunday night or the Saturday night football game, and Jimmy Johnson night. The Cowboys are favored by 6. I have the Cowboys winning 34-20. I think they're going to put on a show for Jimmy Johnson. I think this is a big game for the Cowboys. So Cowboys win 34-20, get back on the right track in the winning market and get that 11th win. Next up, Dolphins versus Ravens. Ravens are favored by 3.5. This is in MNT Bank Stadium. Ravens win this game 30-14. I think the Ravens are just a better football team than the Dolphins. I just don't see how they're going to stop Lamar Jackson and a ground attack that with Gus Edwards and even Justice Hill, who they had to play because of the injury to Keith Mitchell, who tore his ACL last week. They played well, all things considered, and it's just like these Ravens teams always find a way, even with injuries, no matter what happens, they find a way to go and just play very well. They live by, everyone says, next man up. They live by that mantra, and they produce. So I think the Ravens win 30-14. Next up, Bengals versus Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by 7. have the Bengals winning 28-14. I don't like how the Chiefs line the Chiefs is terrible. I think the wide receivers aren't very good. I think besides Travis Kelce, there's no one to throw the ball to. And I think the Bengals bounce back after what happened against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. So I have the Bengals winning 28-14. And game, I have the Cardinals versus Eagles. The Eagles are favored by 10.5. I'm going to choose the Eagles to win. But again, I think the Eagles win by a small margin. 31-28, because I just don't think this Eagles offense is going to get going. I wouldn't be against if the Cardinals win. The Cowboys actually need the Cardinals' help. But I see the Eagles winning 31-28. But again, more questions than answers for the Philadelphia Eagles. For NFL World, I'm Jacob Peter. Out.